Oh my goodness. Dr. Henry, man, I saw something in the chat come up there. Actually, that came from us. It says, get ready for the singing and music. So you ready to sing, man? We got a song?
Listen, if I start singing, man, we may have less viewers, man. So
You and me both, my brother. Listen, man, a Merry Christmas to you. I know it's a day late, but Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you, Doc.
yes, yes. Merry Christmas to you too. And listen, we got to tell our viewers we're missing a critical piece, man, of the round
Yeah.
table.
Man, it
Yes.
was so kind of a sudden and unexpected, and we just want everybody to know that our other co-host, Pastor Roger Wade, is not with us today because he lives in
Yeah.
Nashville, and many of you
Hmm.
are aware that there was a big explosion. Something took place in Nashville yesterday that knocked out a whole lot of the communications in the area. And so the internet, he does not have access to the internet at his home. I thought we thought we were going to have him with us because he said, "Man, I'm gonna go down to the Starbucks and see if I can get on their Wi-Fi." So I was thinking I was going to see Pastor Wade sitting in a Starbucks or outside in the car off the Starbucks. But if he gets in, we're looking forward if he can get in. But otherwise, we want you to keep everybody in that area who
Yes.
may have been affected. I heard it was an explosion and that luckily
Yes.
no one was hurt or anything like that. So that is a
Right.
blessing and a blessing.
Listen, and I know he's a trooper. So again, Pastor Wade, you are missed, but I know that God definitely is going to work it out with you and the family, so that you could be on again with us, so that we could have our complete team. And by the way, another thing I want to let our listening viewers know, Pastor Paul, I just got to give you a shout out. If you have not been able to hear and see the week of prayer that Pastor Paul is
Oh yeah.
doing called Joy to the World, you want to get on there because he has been having powerful preachers from night to night. And then there's this engagement that's happening, Pastor Paul. Can you tell me a little bit about this engagement that happens
Yeah.
after the message?
So listen, so this was intended actually to be an evangelistic event, not just a week of prayer, and we called it joy, not just joy to the world, but joy to the 2020 world. We were very intentional
All right.
about talking about. Listen, it's not just joy to. This is a whole different ball of wax that we've been dealing with in this year, and we even put a question mark at the end of that. But all week long, we've been having speakers come from all over the nation, and they have just been bringing the word powerfully each night. But at the end of the sermon, so I asked each preacher to only preach for 20 minutes, and you know that's a hard ask. So we've asked
And
the
that's,
preachers
that's just the introduction, preacher. Wait. That's just the introduction. We're just getting started,
an
man.
evangelistic sermon for 20 minutes. Listen, we gave it a shot because this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to see if we could engage the audience in the discussion so that people were moving from just being spectators and watching. So we streamed on YouTube, we streamed on Facebook, and then we had people inside of a Zoom room. So I had two guest hosts with me every single night. As you know, you and Pastor Wade were one of my guest hosts. And so at the end of the sermon, we would kind of take some time and this live stream in front of everybody and debrief the sermon for about 4 or 5 minutes. And then we would invite those that were on Facebook and YouTube to join us in the Zoom room. And then there were breakout rooms in the Zoom where each of my co-hosts would then take some time and just answer any questions, facilitate any dialogue that people had about the evangelistic sermon that had just been preached. I was very nervous to do this. I was scared. I was like, what if nobody goes into the room? What if nobody wants to participate? But dude, people, that has been the thing that people, the sermons have been great, but people have been raging about the idea that they get to participate and they are in the rooms and they get to talk and to share among that. And so this is a format that has just been very intriguing. And we're not done yet. We finished tonight. As soon as I leave here, we've got the last night. Dr.
Yeah.
Carlton P. Bird is going to be our final speaker for the series. So as soon as we finish this, we begin at 5 p.m. Eastern time tonight. If you want to take the opportunity to kind of see and what that feels like, we invite you to join us tonight at 5 p.m. Dr. Bird is the speaker director of the Breath of Life Ministries, the senior pastor at the Oakwood University College Church. Everybody knows who Dr. Bird is. But if you don't, listen, you don't want to miss tonight. I can go into evangelist mode right quick, but I know that that's coming. We'll get to that.
Well, listen, again, I just want to tell our viewers, check out what's happening tonight because, again, this is innovative. In fact, Pastor Paul, you've inspired me. I'm going to inculcate some of these things and do it for my series, maybe when I do a series next year. So I just definitely appreciate your innovation. And, hey, we're blessed. We're blessed to have
Amen.
people like you in the ministry. By the way, viewers, we want you to share our feed today because we have a show on the docket. Pastor Paul, what's on the table?
Man, well, listen, today has gone through so many iterations. We have been talking about all kinds of things this year, but we've talked about the impact that COVID has had on ministries. And when we're talking about doing a holiday edition of the Pastors Roundtable, we wanted to include some music and some musicians. And so today, what we're talking about is the impact that COVID-19 has had on musicians and music ministry. And we've got some wonderful guests that are here with us today. We're actually going to hear some music today. I'm excited about that. But you're also going to meet some musicians and people associated with the music industry that you know, some of them that you're going to want to know after you finish seeing us today. Now, I got to throw this out there. I hate doing this, but no, I'm not going to do it. Let's just roll. So who do we have? Who do we have first? We're going to introduce them to you as we go along. You've seen the flyer, but where are we starting today, Dr. Henry?
I think we're starting with Sarah Sulton. I think that's the one on the table. She's around the table today, and we're going to deal with Sister Sarah Sulton.
Boom. Let's bring her on right now. Sarah, listen, Sarah, we never want you to be on the table because there's something that happens to stuff that's on the table. It gets ate up, as my mama would say. But listen, we are so excited and happy to have you with us today.
Yes.
Well, let's introduce Sarah. Sarah is and she's going to correct me when I mess this up. So bless the Lord for that. She is the director, the president, the CEO, the one of those. You pick one of those of the Adventist Musicians Network. And Adventist Musicians Network is it started out, from what I recall, as a Facebook group, but now it's got thousands of Adventist musicians, and we're just going to spend like maybe the next 10 minutes or so, Sarah, having you talk to us about the Adventist Musicians Network. And we're going to pretend like Pastor Wade is right next to us there. So let's start there. What is the Adventist Musicians Network? Let's start with what it is, and then we'll start talking about maybe some of the things that you've seen that have impacted the musicians during this pandemic. So what is it? Tell us, what is it? What's it intended to do? How did it start?
Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to come and join the Pastors Roundtable. The Adventist Musician Network was designed originally to give Adventist musicians an opportunity to come together, to network, to be strategic and intentional about music ministries on the local level. The Adventist Musician Network was founded originally by Sean Wilson, who is an accomplished pianist of himself, and has his own business currently from Florida. And one of the things that he noticed is there was not any type of group, if you will, in social media for musicians that were Seventh-day Adventists, to be able to come to dialogue and to talk about some of the things that were happening at their churches, some of the strengths, some of the things that work for them, some of the challenges that they were having in ministry. And so that was the birth of the Adventist Musician Network.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Let me ask you this. Who can join? Who's able to join this Adventist network?
Well,
because I can sing in the shower.
Right.
So because I can sing in the shower. I am. Whoo. Yeah.
Do I have to
Well,
audition, send in a recording?
you don't want to hear Anselm's sing, right? Well, one of the blessings about the Adventist Musician Network is we define musician to include singers, songwriters, um, performance or musicians or instrumentalists, creators, producers, choir directors, praise and worship leaders. So from where Sean began in its inception, we are now focused on how can we unite all of us with allowing autonomy of what people are doing, but to have some sort of organization, if you will, to be able to accomplish that, and then to be able to collectively address some of the needs that are happening in the church. We partner also with pastors, but we want it to be inclusive for people that are intentional and that are actually involved in ministry. In our closed group, our public group or public fan page is open to everyone.
Awesome.
Wow. So it sounds like, again, you said started from Sean Wilson. I happen to know Sean Wilson, very, very talented musician. Father, it was the musician at Oakwood for a little while as well. And
Wilson, yes.
yes. So definitely you have the people there that really are invested in this music ministry. But let me ask you this. It seems as if many churches are now trending towards putting most of their attention in technology with both resources and time. And we know that, especially in this virtual era, I mean, we got to make sure that when we're playing the music, that it's feeded right and all that. How much resources, or how much resources and time and coordination goes into what you do from week to week?
The Adventist Musician Network currently has 2 live platforms, and one of them on Wednesday is called the Midday Service, and that allows pastors to be able to share their ministry, not just within the United States, but internationally, because we also partnered with some other Adventist-related ministries and some other groups outside of the United States. So that's part of the platform. And then we focus on saying, you know what, instead of, as much as I love Fred and Donnie and Jonathan McReynolds, instead of sending your resources there, look from within and introducing them to a wide array of Adventist artists. And most of our artists are independent. So some of those things that you're talking about, as far as being able to have them and to be able to afford quality music ministry, is reasonably professional. And I'll say that, reasonably professional. And so we stream on that platform. And then we also have our AMN Live on Saturday nights, which generally airs. And that particular platform launched us to give the opportunity for our Adventist artists to stay relevant.
Nice.
For those of you that understand the way the music industry works, you could have a hit today, or everybody knows you today, and then in a couple of months, your history and somebody else has replaced you. And so what we wanted to do is to create a platform where artists can come free of charge, almost like a radio talk show, like the Breakfast Club and some other formats where we feature additional artists and individuals that are up and coming, and not just African American artists. We have artists on our show from Nigeria. We have artists on our show from New Zealand. We've had artists on our show from Italy. Wow. And from France. And in particular, we have one of our blessings of this platform is we've been blessed to partner with our Adventist brothers and sisters in France. And we have now, and I guess I'm ahead of myself in sharing this, but what will be called AM in France specifically. Amazing and incredible artists that mirror some of the goals that we have. And the Lord has allowed us to partner in many ways.
Well, listen, I got to say this just out of the gate here. I am excited to have maybe and we might talk about this, Dr. Henry, just to have the network on where we can spend an entire show kind of talking and digging deeper into this. But just before we make this transition to the next set, from your vantage point, as you have been in contact with musicians from a very wide, particularly Adventist musicians from a very wide, I'm assuming there's from writers to performers to musicians themselves that play different instruments. Have you seen any noticeable impact? What has been the impact of COVID-19 and churches being closed? What's been the impact that you've seen? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? Oh, by the way, too, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. We just put something up on the screen. Somebody wanted to ask. They said, where do we send resources to online? There's some folk wanting to help. So first, let's do that, and then I'll come back and ask and get you to answer that question.
Okay, well, we do have a page, Adventist Musician Network, and we are also on YouTube, the Adventist Musician Network. We also have a private group, the Adventist Musician Network, and our email address is adventistmusiciannetwork@gmail.com.
Okay, we're gonna get somebody to go ahead and put that in the chat for us so folk can follow up on that. So now let's go with that question, and then we need to go ahead and make the transition. So what's the impact? What kind of impact have you seen or heard that musicians are saying that COVID-19 has had on what they do?
It has been tremendous, and it's been painful for many of them. And at the same time, it's been an opportunity. I'm not sure what just happened.
Yeah, it looks like we had a big buffer thing going on there, and we got kicked off of line. But it looks like our folk are still in place. We've still got, we're just going to wait for Dr. Henry to get back in. We're not going to wait. Just go ahead and pick up where you left off. He'll be back in a second here. So you were talking about that impact. So go ahead and pick up where you left off.
It has been tremendous for many of our artists because obviously the whole concept of COVID and how it's spread is spread through particles,
right,
breathing and saliva and all of those things. In particular with the breathing, it can impact your ability to perform to a live audience. And so it has been it's been hurtful. And as I was saying before, we also had I had one artist that shared how they lost $3,000 literally in events that they had planned out from a revival for a couple of weeks. And so, and people are having to do things that, to make ends meet that they necessarily would not have done before.
Wow.
And I would say, think of it as being a starving artist. As an actor, you do whatever you can to pay the bills, but you're like, Lord, please open the door for that. We have been reaching out to provide some opportunities for that. And one of them I can share is a part of Rays of Light Television, which we've partnered with, and and are contracted to provide the music for that the newest Adventist television channel that debuts this evening.
Oh, this evening they debut.
Yes, it does. It debuts
That's
this
awesome.
evening.
Okay,
And so one of the things that we're doing, the artists that have performed for our live shows, we are allowing them first the opportunity to not only showcase their ministry, but they're being compensated.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to put those resources and those links in the show notes that you will find. We want to now. Is there a handle that we can put out there if anybody wants to check out the debut this evening? Um,
Yes, I will. It will be on Rays of Light television. It will be live streamed for the first part, but it will be a premium service that will be available on Roku and Apple TV for
oh,
listeners. We're very excited about the partnership with the regional conferences. And Rupert Salmon is the owner and the general manager.
okay.
But I will be happy to pass on that information as well. So hopefully at the end of your broadcast, you can share that with our listeners.
Wow, that's
And
fascinating.
tonight,
That's exciting to
Gail
hear.
Jones Murphy is the featured artist.
Awesome,
Tomorrow
Wow.
awesome,
night,
awesome.
Lyndon Carragher. And then on Tuesday, it's Tracy Satterwhite from Texas.
Okay, all right. Dr. Henry, welcome back. Glad you made it back, man.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We just had some glitches in the stream here. I don't know if that's Tennessee making its way all the way down here or not, but we lost our signal for just a moment, but we're
Oh my.
glad to make it back. Listen, Sarah, thank you so very
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
stopping by
Yeah.
today. We know there's a wealth of information and resources that you have, particularly as it impacts musicians. You going to sing for us before you go? No?
You know what? That was last week as a part of our Christmas program. As
Oh,
a part of that. But I do want to, if I may, and I will pass this link on to you. The Adventist Musician Network also has a Spotify playlist, which
Mm.
is compiled by one of our executive team members, Kirk Blackwell, and that Blackwood, excuse me, and that is called Christmas Eve AMN. You do not, some of the most incredible Adventist artists internationally. You
Oh,
do not want to miss that. And if we can pass that playlist on to you, because when people play it and listen to it, our artists are compensated. So we thank you for that.
okay.
all right.
Wow.
All
Wow.
right.
Well, we definitely have to follow this and make sure you put that link there in there so that we can get on tonight. Some people want to get on tonight and see the debut of this
Amen.
ministry and what you're doing. So praise God for you. All right.
And
Well, Pastor
Absolutely.
thank you
Paul.
for having me.
Thank you for
Oh, not
joining
a
us. We
problem.
look to have you back again with us soon so that we can just dig a little deeper into that Adventist Musicians Network. We thank you so much for what you were doing and the opportunities that you are providing for so many of our own musicians who are out there just trying to do ministry and trying to help people see a brighter, better picture of Jesus Christ. So thank you so much for what you do. All right, we're going to transition now, and I know this screen is not going to be set up perfectly. We're almost there. We're
We're
going
going to
to
the
put some faces on the screen here. Boom. Wow. Here we
can we
go. Listen, we've
can we
got,
introduce them?
yes.
Oh my, listen, we have two powerhouses with us today. And I'm telling you, you're going to be blessed by their ministry. Pastor Paul, we're going to have to give them about maybe 20 seconds to let us know their ministry. But again, we have Minister John Stoddard, Minister Roberto Burton. We're going to give you, Pastor Paul, what? I'm going to do 20 seconds, 30 seconds so that they can introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their ministry. I'm so excited to have them. Go
Uh,
ahead, you first, John Stoddard.
Yeah, I'd first of all like to say that on my resume, I have that I'm a fan of Roberto Burton. That's kind of the
See,
thing that I usually put at the
see,
top.
see, I'm getting ready to
And
get started, John. See, okay, all right. I was coming for you, but you got me. You got me, John.
Roberto and I actually grew up together in Philadelphia,
Exactly.
Allegheny East conference. So we've known each other for a real long time. I'm a big fan of his music, and he's so talented, and he's just been a dear friend. And just honored to be on today, hanging out with my buddy and you as well, Pastor Paul and Pastor Henry. Thank you so much for having us on.
Uh,
All
it is
right.
an honor. It is an honor. Listen, Roberto, you should hold on. Let me turn this up a little bit about what before he starts talking. Okay.
Okay.
All right. He should recognize this. I think. You taught me the term for this music in the background.
We can't hear it, Pastor Paul.
Oh, y'all can't hear it?
We can't
No,
hear it.
Yeah.
no,
What about now?
Yeah, a little bit. A little more, a little more.
Oh, I
a
think
little
it's.
more.
Oh, here we go. I had no idea what you even called this stuff until Roberto shared it with me last week. It was just last week. But go ahead, Roberto. We're giving you that 39.8 seconds.
First of all, I'm the bigger fan of John because John played in my wedding.
Oh wow!
I mean, I could share that story, but we don't have that kind of time. But I got in trouble with my wife the day of the wedding because John played so well. We had about 12 different musicians standing there going crazy, and John's, of course, is improvising. And my wife, Sandra, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. First thing she said was, "Y'all were listening to John and not me." I was coming down that aisle, not John. So again, I'm a big fan of what John does. John's approach to music and his scope of how he approaches things is just phenomenal. No offense, John is the modern day Bach of our today's world.
Oh wow,
so
that's huge.
I'm a big, more than just fan. I am. Some of the music I create, I'm like, what would John do first? So again, scores that I create now, and it's because John has taken the time to not just pour into me. I've been able to watch him, like he said, through the years, not just in Philadelphia, but literally around the world. So yeah, I'm honored to be here, guys.
Man, well, we are just delighted to have both of you here. And just before Dr. Henry, there was a little segue that I picked up in the last conversation with Sarah that came to mind, and I want to throw this out there. Is that growing up in the Adventist church, and I'm a pastor's kid, grew up in church. Your pastor's always around musicians, all that kind of stuff. But the Adventist musician back then, when I grew up, the Adventist musician was a teacher in the school who played for church services, was a nurse who had taken some piano lessons in high school. They were the people who were directing the choir. Maybe they sang in the Aeolians at Oakwood, but they were, a realtor or something else. What you guys illustrate to us is a moving away from I'm just doing music as a thing on the weekends at my church to something that is more of this is a career. We used to not see Adventist musicians take on music as a career as much as it just was something that you did when somebody called you up to play for song service. Talk to us quickly about that and how that transition, how you've seen that transition over the time that you've been watching what happens in the Adventist church with music.
Can I start on this, Roby? It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that was sort of been my observation growing up as well, just what you described. But it wasn't until I got older and began working professionally in the music industry that I noticed two things. One is that, and Roberto will attest to this, is that in the music industry, the reputation of Adventist, I'll call it musical scholarship, is unparalleled. All you have to do is tell someone that I'm an Adventist musician, and your stock just goes through the roof. And it's because there's a lot of really talented people, but even back then, for the people who weren't doing music full time, that there was a level of musical knowledge and scholarship. That's the only word I could think of that Adventists, I think, have become really known for. So Roby and I, we grew up in Philadelphia, and two of the musicians, there were a couple there who were really, really well known in Adventism, Gwen and Alan Foster.
Yes.
So neither of them did music full time, but Alan Foster could play all the organ literature and so on. So what he wasn't just, and so many of those people that we talk about, we describe, and we honor, they weren't just, hey, I have some talent. And so, yes, they may have been playing music on the side, but it wasn't because they didn't have what it took necessarily to be a professional musician. It just, for whatever reason, you know, like so much of particularly black history, there just weren't the opportunities, or they were laying groundwork. You know, I don't know that I would be able to do music full time if it weren't for an Alan Foster, who did it at such a high level on the weekends. You know, I mean, it takes me all week to try to do what he was doing on the weekend. He was that good.
Crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we really owe so much to the people who sold into us specifically, but who just really set a standard of what it meant to be a great musician. It was a step beyond just I'm anointed or I'm talented. You know, these were people who put in work and who really worked to develop the gifts that God had given them, even though they may not have had the opportunity to do it full time. I think many of them, given the opportunity today, would be doing what we're doing. And so I'm just grateful for that groundwork that they laid.
Wow. So some of them not doing this full time had time or found time or made time to play, to write, to direct choirs and put groups together and all of those things. Wow, what an awesome legacy Adventist music has. Roberto, anything you want to chime in on that or add to that?
Let me make it even more personal. The person he talked about, Alan Foster, had a master's degree in social work. But after he left doing social work during the week, he would go up the street and take organ lessons. But then didn't study organ, he studied jazz. And all of that is in his compositions, music that he writes, that he's still making royalty checks off of music that he wrote in the 60s because he studied the craft. And that's what people like John and I do. We don't just, okay, this is nice. No, we've taken the time to study the craft. Right. And now the great musicians that people listen to all day long, like there was a Christmas album that I was listening to, and I heard the orchestration, and I was like, that's John. well-known artist. I don't even have to say the name, but John knows who I'm talking about. The first 2 or 3 bars, I was like, oh, that's John.
You know they're right.
Again, but it's because of his level of attention to detail. But again, it's like John said, that influence. All we have to do is say we're Adventists, and folk are like, oh, they know what we're doing. It's like a giving. So again, what we have to do is stay true to the craft. Again, like John said, I would be nothing if an Alan Foster didn't sit after service and make an organ talk to the point where it's like, okay, I need to do that.
Nobody like him, man.
Wow. None.
That guy.
None.
I'll tell you who he is. I tell you who he is. For those of you, many people may not know his name unless you're from Allegheny East. But you may have heard of a group called A Special Blend.
There you go.
Yeah, a group called A Special Blend.
Yes.
So the soprano in that group, Joya Foster, is Gwen and Alan's daughter.
And she was my babysitter when they traveled the world.
Right. I mean, the legacy of, that guy. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm on the live getting chilled because, again, his attention to detail. Like, how do you write a song before going to church and that song's still making money? But it was all because Aunt Gwen was still trying to get her hair done. But again, his attention to detail in his rehearsals. Again, I had a chance to go when I was younger, going to his rehearsals at Penn Memorial Baptist Church when Ebenezer SDA used to come over and they'd link up together. He would have this huge 150-voice choir at the touch of a button. I'm going, okay, how was he doing that? And then going home like nothing happened.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a special guy. He's special guy.
Listen, I have to chime in here. Again, just privileged to have you here on this program. I mean, phenomenal musicians. I mean, we are blessed. You can see it in the chat, just to
Sarah,
have
what's
you
up,
on our
Sarah? I
program
see you over
today.
there.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. I know
Yeah,
that.
since Sarah
Oh,
was
go ahead.
still hanging out in the
Oh,
back,
sorry.
we just went
Okay.
ahead and brought her back out here since she was still there.
Welcome to the show, Sarah. Nice to have you.
You know what? And what Adventist Musicians Network is doing, it ties into this as well, because one of the things that it does, in addition to the many things, is it creates. Roby, you were just starting to talk about this. Is it creates a not just a camaraderie, but a sort of iron sharpens iron effect. You know, particularly among musicians, to where you're over in your little corner doing your thing, and we're all of us have that part of us that says, hey, I think I'm doing all right, I'm pretty good at this. But then you get into an organization like Adventist Musicians Network, or you get into a networking situation where you're able to stay connected with other great musicians, and what it does is it pushes you to not just sit back on, what you've done or what you've accomplished, but you try to improve, man, what is a skill that I can add to what I do? Or how can I improve? Or, man, I've heard Sarah do something incredible in her music ministry. How can I incorporate some of that into mine? And you just develop this sort of camaraderie and this iron sharpening iron, this strand that runs through. And it's really unique. I think, and I don't say this to be arrogant, but it's really unique culturally to Adventism. There's a wealth of cultural depth that's just in the Adventist culture. I mean, I appreciate people who share, because we don't always know how far back it goes and how deep it runs. We see groups like Take Six, but if you ever get a chance to talk to them about Alan Foster, or Shelton Kilby, or some of the people who they used to just sit and listen to this music over and over again. And it's not always big artists like that. My grandmother was the organist at our church, and I used to sit on that front row every Sabbath and just take it in. Those were the people and the culture, not just the people, but there was something, I still don't know what it is, but it's something in the Adventist music culture that is just really, really unique, and it's added such value to the music history and music historical conversation. I'm so honored to be a part of it.
So we know we have phenomenal musicians in this church. However, I want to ask this question: the appreciation from the church. Now, I think it has improved, but what is your take on that? Has the church, or just in your experience going from church to church and interacting and collaborating with other musicians in our organization, do you feel the church is really appreciating our musicians?
I'm going to answer that question in this way. I think that it is human nature to not appreciate what you're used to.
Yes.
It's hard to do that. You know what I mean? And so I'm not, what's the word? I'm not bitter about that. I agree with you. I think it's gotten a lot better. But some of that is just a function of how we are, as human beings. I didn't realize at my church growing up that every church didn't have 4 pianists that could play.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that. I just assumed every church had that, and I think a lot of people, so I think some of it is that. And I also think that structurally, the way our church is structured, it makes it difficult to put the resources necessarily to do not just music, but lots of things on high level. So we depend on volunteers to do a lot of things. I mean, from accounting, a lot of churches don't have a full-time CPA, but there's somebody at the church who just does it, and they work as a treasurer. And I think that happens with the music most often. Unfortunately, I think for music in particular, it takes a little more than I think our church is designed to be able to put. The larger churches are set up to be able to afford it, but the smaller churches are not. They're just not in position to be able to afford to have a full-time musician on staff or to hire musicians. And because traditionally we've had so much talent in our denomination, that as churches, we got churches live streaming now. So the expectations of what people watching or even coming to our churches, as it's begun to rise, I don't think that we quite have a grasp or for whatever reason have the ability to be able to put the resources in to be able to do music on that high level. And that goes for music. I think media in general, we lean on volunteers to run our sound systems, our lights. And those are really, frankly, really specialized. They're people who have master's degrees in lighting, and so, or sound,
That's crazy.
or music. And so, until I don't know what the answer is. Again, I try not to be bitter. I try to do the best I can. We do, I think, still are inclined to sow into our churches, particularly our home churches. And, I don't know that I've ever gotten paid, what I probably should for singing at but that's my church, you know what I mean? And so I'm not bemoaning that fact. We do what we can to sow into our church. But I do have, and I'm going to try to keep from rumbling, I do think there's some things that we can do. I see Sarah talked about something. I was so excited. I would listen to your segment, Sarah. But when I almost jumped out of my seat here when I was sitting listening to you talk about the practical steps that you guys are taking to create situations where musicians can have the opportunity to make a living doing music. Because the reality is that, if the musicians aren't supported, they're not going to have the ability to continue making music in the way that they are. So I'm so excited to hear about this new network and the new show. It's really going to benefit not just the musicians individually, but it's going to benefit the church, because it's going to put the musicians in the position to be able to continue to create. They'll have the resources to be able. I'm so excited about what you guys doing. Bravo. I really affirm that.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. I think it's also important for us to realize that if we don't create spaces at our churches, it's going to be difficult for us to retain our singers, our musicians in the church.
Yeah.
Long term. We have to become intentional about all ministry, not just the spoken word, but it's also what pastors do outside of that. And then it goes to the next, then it goes to your music ministry. And I think the one of the blessings of COVID is that artists have had opportunity to reinvent themselves so that they can be introduced to that pastors can start seeing us in a different light. Because now, okay, this like the word is nice, but who's gonna play for me? So matter of fact, John, I'm from Riverside, and I know today we were honored to have you to be a part of ministry. And so it's those type of things. We want to be able to have Adventist artists, not just singing backup for somebody that but to be able to be featured in the platform that God has given them. Yep. And then even listening, as Roby said earlier, you've got, a matter of fact, and congratulations again for your recent degree. Just people having to, just people that have gone to school and that have put in the time, effort, and energy. It's important for that lens to lead the music ministry, and not just individuals who happen to be in charge saying this is how it's supposed to be.
Listen, I want to jump in on something, John, that you mentioned earlier. about growing up in a church and not realizing that everybody didn't have what you had in that church. Dr. Henry and I, a lot of people may not know this, but Dr. Henry and I grew up in the same church in Orlando, Florida, in Mount Sinai. And there at Mount Sinai, some of you may recognize the name Winifred Rivers.
Oh yeah,
Winifred Rivers was the church musician for us there. But in addition to Winifred Rivers, Roger Ryan was a member as I grew up in that church. And then there's another name that a lot of people may not recognize, but musical genius, Dwayne Adele. I don't know if
I know Dwayne.
You know Dwayne?
Oh yeah.
Dwayne was just crazy but we grew up in an environment where we come to church and our choirs. It was a church that had like 4 or 5 different choirs. 2 or 3 of those
Great
choir
musical
directors
tradition
were
at that church.
Aeolians, all that kind of stuff. And so we went as kids, we leave there and go to, I actually spent, Sarah, I spent a couple years in high school in Nashville. So I was at Riverside. So I'm leaving Orlando and I go to Riverside. I graduate high school, and where do I go? I go to Oakwood College. So for me, the music and Adventist music, that's the picture I have of it. And then when I leave seminary, they put me in a tiny little church with 20-something members out in the bush. And
where you are the music.
And it's like, okay, Robbie, can you play for us, please?
Yes, and so,
and that's probably more typical, Pastor Paul, of what is in most places. You were in Orlando, we were in Philly. You got LA, so there's these little pockets where you have that, but most places they don't. They don't have access to that music on that level.
And listen to this. I don't want to cut you, Anselm. I don't know if you had something else.
No, we're good, because we got about a couple of minutes before we need to bring in the next crew.
Okay. Well, with this virtual church now, where people have to do church virtually, and they're getting exposed to a whole lot of other churches where they are appreciating musicians. I mean, it is a Roby, I want you to chime in.
It's been such a blessing for so many artists.
So I want Roby to chime in here. Listen, I mean, we're talking about appreciation. We're talking about have we as a church, we know we've gotten a little better, but have we really appreciated this music ministry? I mean, especially everybody here, but what you do as well. I mean, your arrangement, everything. What do you think? Have we gotten better? Let's answer that question for me first, Roby. And then what do we need to do? Because we do know that we do need to get better, right? So can you address those 2 things for me today?
Let me come from John's perspective. We've gotten better at realizing we need to do better, but let me come from a positive aspect. Back in 2005, Dr. James Doggett, prolific pastor, when Madison came on the scene, his first thing was, let me push the music ministry along with the preaching ministry so we can get the word out to people. By 2005, I was able to transition from music to being a producer and producing the church service. From there, I started to record and make my own music because I said, wow, if they can do this on Sabbath, what can I do during the week? By 2007, 2008, I'm at John's house going, John has toys. What do I need to learn? And it was a progression thing because, again, someone took the reins and said, hey, the signs of the times are coming. But that was 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, I'm mixing church service to make it sound better. But now on this level, the same thing I was doing 15 years ago, we have more toys to make this virtual church a better experience because, again, that's what other denominations have been doing for years. And just like I'm seeing on the screen, we've gotten better, but there are ways to go. But what we have to recognize as Adventists, as musicians and producers, and as clergy, that people are looking for a word more than just at Sabbath morning at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
People are struggling all week long. And if they have something to turn to watch that's of quality, they're going to follow and watch and say, hey, what do they have that's going to help uplift me? And that's what music, that's what David in the Bible did. That was his job as the musician to keep the atmosphere in the courts for others to be happy. So that's part of what I do behind the scenes. My job is to make sure that you can hear the word and also be able to step in front of the camera or the microphone and be able to present something not only to the people, but something that God would say, yeah, I'm pleased because you put in the time, you put in the work. You didn't just, let's just get up and sing. And it's more than just planning a rehearsal. It's like, wait, what's the pastor speaking about? Can I find the right song to produce? How long will it take me? What's pre-production? What will it take for that 1 3-minute segment for someone to see Jesus and not me? That's the attention to detail Alan Foster put in all of us.
That's true.
I'll say this and I'll stop. John, and you'll remember this. During the appeal song, and I remember this, Ebenezer used to sing the song called "Oh How He Loves You and Me." But what was interesting is they would sing the melody line, which is rare nowadays. But they would sing it, John, and Uncle Al would play it in the circle of fifths. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are these people coming down? And every week there was like 34 new people coming down. And I was like, oh, they're being intentional. So again, Uncle Al had the music theory in order to make it happen so the preacher didn't have to do a whole lot of work. And that's the tie-in. That's, the song says the tie that binds. That's what being an Adventist musician really looks like. There are certain things we just do because we spent the time doing the research to know that these 3 minutes don't belong to us. It's about someone getting to that chair and seeing him.
Amen.
Well said. Well said.
Listen, I saw you guys about a month ago or so on a show with Kirk Nugent, and as you guys were going through that discussion there's just so much in that I wish we could have the time today to dig into. But we've got two other guests that we want to bring on. But listen, John, I know you play and you sing and you write and all that kind of stuff. I wish we had a keyboard or something where you could share with our audience. I know that when our audience saw you on the flyer, they were like, "Oh yes." But listen, next time
I have to come back. That'll be my.
You have to come
promise me we'll come back and we'll do some music the next time.
Oh, we'll love it. We'll love it. Listen, thank you. Go ahead, Doc.
Let me just say this. The first time I heard John Stoddard, I was in D.C. And I said, "Is BB singing right now? BB whining?"
He's one of my heroes, man. I'll take that compliment.
Listen, phenomenal. Both of you, all three phenomenal people, phenomenal musicians. Man.
Well, we want to say thank you for giving us this particular platform. A lot of times we're talking to other musicians, but one of the great things about this particular platform is that we get to share our perspective with perhaps people who are not in our circle. Okay. And it's great that we're able to make this connection. And that's a big part, I think, that you talk about what can our church do. I think these types of discussions really help to demystify, okay, what's going over there in music world? What's going over there in preaching world? And so we're all on the same team trying to get this gospel out here,
Amen.
Well, awesome. We are looking forward to being able to have each of you back. And we just want to wish you a very happy holidays as you go throughout this season. We are excited about the prospect of being able to spend a little bit more time doing exactly what you just articulated, John. And we love you guys. I got to share this with you too, John, is that I not too long ago, we buried my god brother. And I remember, and he was a musician as well. And I remember asking him what he wanted to do, and his aspiration, he said, this is Rodney Allen.
Rodney, I
I
was gonna
knew it.
say, I
Yeah.
wonder if that's
I
who
knew
you were
it.
talking about.
Rodney
Ooh, don't.
says
Ooh.
when I asked
Mm.
Man,
Rodney,
for
he
real,
said,
yeah.
"My aspiration is to be
Yeah.
like John Stoddard." That
Oh boy.
was what he told me.
See,
I met him. He was 12, 13 years old, and
yeah,
just, that's a great note to end on. I mean, he's an example of a guy who just got in
Yes.
line with this trend, this legacy of Adventist musicianship, and he was for sure one of the great ones, man. And I saw him work and work and work and work and work, and just he didn't rest on his talent alone. But if there's one thing that hopefully I passed on to him was that piece of it, because he was already talented long before he met me. But man, he worked so hard because he wanted to be excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he really, really, truly was, man. What a great, great musician.
Absolutely.
Brilliant musician
Yeah.
and a wonderful friend. He was a
Yes,
great
good people, good people,
Yeah.
man. Great
the
people.
album that the family released. Actually, when I found out that he passed, his brother reached out to me, and I had no idea. But in 2014, he recorded an album at my house,
Oh, wow.
and
that's right.
I turned over the masters. So the album people are listening to, a lot of that stuff, the entire album was done in the basement of my house. And I was
Wow.
honored that the fact that the family had reached out. I was kind of like in tears the rest of the night because I'm going, you never know. So again, it attests to always being excellent, even when you don't feel like it. I saw someone in the comment, any advice? You have to be excellent when you don't feel like it. When you're tired, when you're stressed out, you've got to make the time to just always, like Wayne Buckner always says, Dirt FT, do it right the first time.
Right.
So,
That's right. Wayne Buckner, also from that Orlando
Yes.
area, that church district we were in. Wayne was
Right,
part
yeah.
of that as we were growing up
Yeah.
as kids.
You realize you're just gonna have to stop, man, because we're gonna keep talking. We're gonna look up.
Yes.
I know, and we've got Dwayne
We'll
and
have missed the broadcast. You'll have missed your preaching service. Dr. Bird's gonna be mad.
Right.
Listen, yeah, we got to make this transition. Thank you so very much. We will have you guys back again. God bless.
Happy holidays,
and
everybody.
happy holidays. All right, take
Yeah.
care.
All right.
That's
God
it.
bless.
Listen, we're going to go ahead and transition now. We're going to bring in our last two guests for this evening. And I'm going to fix some screens here again. There is, now we've got some space here. Oh, okay. Tell you what, Roberto, since you're still in here, you go ahead and stay there. And I'm going to bring you down in here in this other spot. Danita is in. All right, let's put her in. There we go. And
We're just
then
switching the chairs around, Pastor Paul.
yeah, we're just switching the chairs,
around,
swapping
man.
chairs
That's
here.
what we do on the round table. We switch it around.
All right.
Oh, man.
And there. And then
Oh,
I'm going to
boy.
bring...
Oh, and the whole family is here.
I think we're in for a
family.
treat today. We're in for a treat.
Boom.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Dr. Henry.
Well, listen, we have again. Hey, listen, this is a show about phenomenal musicians. I'm just going to change the title, Phenomenal Musicians. And we have with us here Danita Jones and David Hunt. Give us, now Pastor Paul gave the last people 39.8 seconds. I'm going to give Sister Danita Jones, I'm going to give you 45 seconds just to tell us a little bit about you and about your ministry. We'll definitely appreciate it.
You know, it's so funny. The worship manager in me is going to only take those 39 seconds that you originally gave me, if that's okay. What's so funny is that I actually have my original relationship. I have a relationship with musicians. My ministry is in theater and performing arts. And so I have a company called Productions by Danita Jones that actually goes around to different churches and other entities, and I write original content, and I put on massive productions. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is incorporating not only musicians, but Adventist musicians that otherwise wouldn't have a platform in certain areas. And what's interesting is that, I just don't bring them on for concerts. I a lot of times I make them act. I actually bring them in. I've had the pleasure of working with Theron from Committed and Tam Bodie and different other musicians to just kind of put them in spaces where we can tell a story from a different perspective. You all were talking earlier about, it not just being about the sermon, which is something that I absolutely love doing, because I love taking maybe a sermon topic or a story or a situation from the Bible and expanding that into a full theater production and allowing people to kind of be able to witness the word and not just necessarily have someone talk at them. Because of course, when you can put a person inside of a story, sometimes they don't realize they're being preached to until the entire show is over. And so it's so funny when I was asked to be on the show, it's just like, I don't know if I'm a musician per se, but I love musicians. I grew up in a house full of musicians. And so that is the ministry that I am so very proud of serving in every day.
All right. Listen, I see some people on the chat, Pastor Paul. My friend Kristen Josiah, he said, this is about to be good. Very accomplished musician. David Hunt, this is not your first time coming on here. Tell us a little bit about you and about these wonderful people that are next to you, that's making that picture look better.
Amen. My name is David Hunt, and this is my family with me. I have Joey and my wife, Michelle, and my daughter, Ashley, and we're just so happy to be here. I was just like almost imposter syndrome when I saw the other names on the flyer. I was like, oh man, no, me. But we are delighted. We've been singing together as a family for many years and written some original songs together. But we have been just awesomely blessed to be in God's service, doing music. And my wife and I are music directors at our church here in Lancaster, Mass, the Crosswalk Clinton Church, and it's just been a fantastic effort, although not so much this year because of COVID, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but we're so happy to be here. I was just like, wow, so awesome. Danita Jones, Roberto Burton, St. Paul, Pastor Henry.
David, we remember a few weeks back when you joined us on our Friends our Friends program, and how you just kind of closed us out with that, man. That was just so powerful and just so special a moment. And we wanted to make sure that we got you back on today. Listen, we want to ask you guys some of the questions that we asked to Roberto and John earlier, and to Sarah as well, and particularly Danita, from your vantage point, because as you mentioned, yours is just a little different from just the regular. That's not good language. It's not as a musician per se, but as somebody who, kind of like Roby mentioned, where he kind of would be managing, worship services from a larger point of view. How have you seen COVID's impact in the worship space? Just answer that. What kind of impact have you seen that it has had on that, and particularly the role that you have been playing in that space?
Well, if I may, I want to speak a lot from the performing arts aspect. I do a lot of productions for churches. And of course, when COVID happened, it immediately interrupted the ability for us to do productions, plays, concerts inside of the church walls. And, when you get your degree, I heard, people, when you get your training in it, as I have, my degree is in theater and my master's is in script writing and screenwriting. When you get your degree in these things, one of the things that they never told you about or planned for was the fact that what are you going to do when you can't actually bring people into the physical space anymore? That was never a class. It was never a conversation. So when it happened, it was a very abrupt interruption disruption to what it was that I was used to doing, to what I was, able to kind of handle. I've done collaborations with Roby several times in a lot of different spaces. We were actually planning on a production that was coming up. And so one of the things I recognize is that we had to make an immediate adjustment in how we were going to present what it was that we do in a different light. I love that a lot of musicians have had the opportunity to be able to minister from home, like David and his family. Is one of the things I enjoy, watching their vlog and his going live every day, especially in the month of December. With theater and directing, it's been a little different for us because we're still trying to figure out how to effectively present what we do in a space where we're used to feeding off of our audience. As many of the pastors sometimes may know, that when you're used to preaching and you're used to hearing that amen and that applause and that feedback from your audience, theater works the exact same way. Even in church, we're used to getting and hearing that feedback immediately, and so we're still navigating what that looks like, what that space feels like, and we had to stop looking towards the future of like, well, when this pandemic is over, and really start to examine how can we continue to be effective as performing artists and creatives in this current space now. So it's a trial and error that I don't mind saying that we're still learning in, and but I'm happy to be on the journey of figuring out what that is.
Yeah, I was speaking with someone the other day, and we were talking about the difference between an interruption and a disruption. And many, when we started this pandemic, we looked at it as it was simply an interruption, which meant that there was going to be something that happened for a little while, and then we would be back to normal. But I think many of us have, along the way, we figured out, no, this is not just an interruption. This is disrupted, and there is not going to be a getting back to normal. So finding our way in that, as you just described, as to how do we transition and how do we pivot to still make the presentation of the gospel something that is relevant, that is viable, and that people want to be a part of, is got to be something in so many areas of a liturgy and of a presentation of the gospel that we've all got to find. David, as you have been navigating in this space, you are also, and correct me if I'm wrong, you also are working communications as well. Is that part of?
I work in IT. I'm the IT director for the Atlantic Union. So
okay,
it's been interesting.
Yeah, so it's funny how from music and liturgy and performing arts, those kind of things, that now we're in this intersection that includes IT as well. 2 minutes. Can you share with us some of the challenges or some of the opportunities that you have seen develop because of COVID in that intersection?
Sure. Like what we're doing now, we've had pastors have to pivot and just find ways to get the message out, and using streaming software, Restream, Ecamm, you name it, StreamYard, Zoom. That was the big one. A lot of people started using Zoom right away, and then in that space, you have to have good sound. You have to have good lighting and cameras, and so that all ties in together. And even before COVID, we were using these technologies but mostly in the church, and just we've had to add now the streaming components to them to make them more viable and appealing.
Wow. All right, listen, Dr. Henry, we got about 10 minutes left, and I got to hop into this other thing, and I see David's finger, I see his hands, I'm looking at his hands, and I know Roby is
ready
too.
to go.
Look at his hands, he's ready.
But Pastor Paul, I just want to ask, is Roby going to play something too? I don't know if he's sitting beside his keyboard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Listen, I was trying not to be so obvious to look to see it. Could I see anything down beside Roby there too?
I don't know if you want to do it, so I don't know.
Oh no, not today. David is probably better at this being ready. I've probably been ready once or twice on the evenings, But let me piggyback off of what Danita has said, because a lot of things she said has been interesting here. Without a Danita, I don't feel like church service really works, because now in this space, your service has to be organized down to the second, because you're not just having viewers in the sanctuary anymore. You're having them in this virtual space. And with a person with Danita's skills, you need that organizational component, not to so much put the pastor in a box, but to say, hey, pastor, here's a bigger box which you can create a better space to share the word.
Wow.
And then at the same time, giving everybody time for your pre-produced commercials, announcements, music in that way. So that way, now we're looking at a better structure as to how you're producing your content for your worshipers versus just, hey, announcements are next.
Yep.
Like what? So that's, I'm grateful for these spaces like these. A person like Danita's strength says, okay, I'm not just looking at your content, but I'm saying, hey, how do we organize this in a way that keeps the person involved, keeps them engaging, and at the same time wants to bring them back? You know, music that David and his family have been producing, it's the same thing. They're creating content in order to share not just music ministry, but God's love in an excellent way. I keep going back to that. So again, that's what COVID-19 has done. All really COVID-19 has done for a lot of those producers is to say, oh, now they've got to take notice that we play with these toys that John and I speak of. It's that same thing, you know. That's just what I see has been happening.
And it really, you know, with Roby, what he was saying, it's become the technical aspect, because he's speaking towards that worship management piece that I absolutely love to do. Is that what it really has done? Is that it has allowed someone like me to be able to have that more intimate conversation and say, okay, tell me what you're trying to say. Let's figure out the space how that needs to be said. If we can only say that in 30 minutes, then we want to capitalize on that 30 minutes in order to get you in. I tell my worship managers before COVID, I tell them all the time, the goal is not to get us out on time. It's to get the preacher up on time, right? It's to get the word up on time. Wow. A lot of times you have people that think that, oh, the goal of the worship manager is to rush everything along. No, I'm trying to move everybody out of the way. And so we can have the pastor get up and tell exactly what it is that they need to say. I'm trying to get everybody out of the way so the musicians can sing the songs that they need to sing. And so what COVID has done, though, is that it's allowed me to almost kind of shift into that television production mode in the exact same way. So now I'm saying, okay, this is a camera that we need to focus on so I can move these people in at this specific time. Because again, we have a little bit of time. You know, when you bring people to church, they're sitting there. When people are watching online, they can turn the channel.
Boom. Just
so
like that.
We have to be very good at getting what the content needs to be there on time live so that people can receive the word that they need and they can go on. So absolutely. Thank you for that, Roby.
Yeah, good. Listen, we got to get this, because just before we came live, we had this conversation. Talk to us real quick about workshops. Matter of fact, I don't have the time to do that, because this is what we'll do. We're going to drop Danita's information in the chat.
Yes.
And we're going to put it on our website. Remember, Pastors Roundtable has a website now, so you'll be able to go to, and somebody drop that link in the chat as well, so that and Danita, if there's a link you have to a website or something like that, we will put that up for all of our guests today. We are going to have their information up where you can contact them for any projects, anything that you need. Because
I do workshops. I saw that. I do workshops for worship management. Yes.
Yes, that's what she said. She said, I teach people how to do what I do. And that's just so
I do.
awesome.
I love it. I love it. Good. I love it.
Dave.
Well, listen, we got David right here.
Yes.
So let David just do your thing, David, with your family, minister to us. And then we'll just let you take us out. So just do your thing.
And while you're getting going, I'm going to see if I can fix this screen so we can pull you full screen. So don't mind me. You just go ahead.
Go ahead.
We have the opportunity to share the word because the angels did it. And so we're just going to do what we can. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Ah, 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 ah,
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strain. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing through the night, and the mountains in reply, echoing their great delight. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Da 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 da. Oh, shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Hey, come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn Gloria, excelsis Deo.
Gloria in excelsis Deo. Da 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 in excelsis Deo. Da 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 da. Angels we have heard, angels we have heard. Oh, da 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 da. Angels we have heard on high, angels we have heard on high, angels we have heard on high. Oh, in excelsis
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
Amen. Angels we have heard on high. What an awesome family rendition of that. I think you guys are frozen on my screen, but with the music was coming through. Thank you so very much for that. Dr. Henry? Oh, Dr. Henry, you are muted. We cannot hear you, Doc.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Listen, I know, Pastor Paul, you have to go. You have another program happening. We want to thank our guests for coming. Listen, we don't want this to be the last time. We definitely have to have you come on again. Your ministry is definitely appreciated by us. I want to know more about the workshops that Danita Jones is doing. I want to know more about the Adventist Network. I want to know more about our composers and musicians on here. So thank you so much, Pastor Paul. Next week, I think next week we're going to have a special show, right? Next week.
Man, you got to help me out, brother. My head has been in this series I'm doing. What are we doing? What are we doing
Well,
next
listen,
week?
we're not doing anything next week. Listen, next week we are taking a break. This is going to be a sabbatical. And listen, pray for us. And I know
Mercy.
that God is going to bless us next year as we do ministry. We remind our viewers that we are still at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central. And we definitely miss Pastor Wade. We know Pastor Wade will be back with us. You're definitely missed. But look, we want to thank you. You want to do it, Pastor Paul, for joining us.
I was going to see if we could get Roberto to help us out with this one, since he's down here as the guest host. We need you to say one of those words. You ready, Roberto? You know what we're doing, right?
Hey guys.
I need you to say. Just do this. I need you to say the middle word up here that's underneath the pastor's round table. Deion's going to start us off. Now, I'll start us off. You do the middle word. Deion will do the last word. All right? Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week, where we aim to help keep ministry relevant,
resourced,
and real.
We got it. Take care, everybody.
At the round table.